You ever have one of those moments where somebody crosses a line so hard, you actually go quiet? Like you can feel something in you shift, like, all right, we're not coming back from this. That was me the day my neighbor, the head of our HOA, ripped my daughter's dress in front of half the neighborhood. It was supposed to be a simple Saturday gathering. Music, lemonade, kids running around. My daughter had just finished her piano recital that morning. She wore this little white dress my mom had sewn years ago, before she passed away. Every stitch of that dress carried memory, love, patience, time. You could still see where my mom's hands had lingered in the stitching. So when our HOA president, Madeline Grant, stormed over with her clipboard, pointing at my kid and saying, "That outfit doesn't meet community standards," I thought she was joking. But before I could even respond, she grabbed the hem of my daughter's dress and yanked. The sound of fabric tearing. It's one of those sounds that doesn't just hit your ear, it hits your chest. My daughter froze. Everyone around us froze. Madeline held up that torn piece of cloth like she'd just enforced the law of the land. She said something about maintaining decorum, as if humiliating a 12-year-old in public was some kind of civic duty. I didn't shout, didn't lunge. I just said one sentence. "You touched the wrong child." And even she blinked at that. Like for the first time she realized this wasn't just about some dress code nonsense. What she didn't know was, I don't forget. I build things for a living. Bridges, foundations, load-bearing structures. And that day, I felt something inside me harden into steel. I walked my daughter home, holding that torn piece of fabric in my hand like evidence. Every neighbor we passed avoided my eyes. That's what power does. It teaches people to look away. Inside, my daughter wouldn't even look up. She sat by the piano, trying to fix the torn lace with trembling fingers. I wanted to tell her to stop, that we'd buy a new one, but I realized it wasn't about the dress anymore. It was about dignity. About showing her that some people can't take what's sacred and get away with it. That night, while she practiced a shaky melody, I opened my laptop and pulled up the HOA bylaws. I'd read them before, years ago, when they tried to block my neighbor from building a wheelchair ramp for his wife. Back then, I'd helped him win. And looking at them again, I started seeing things that didn't add up. Missing votes, false amendments, vague clauses. It was like staring at a structure built to look sturdy, but you could see the cracks running through the walls. Next morning, 3 emails from the HOA landed in my inbox. Notice of violation. Fine pending. Further action required. It was the same legal-sounding intimidation tactic Madeline used on everyone who questioned her. My wife, who happens to be an assistant district attorney, read them and smirked. "She's bluffing," she said. "Handle it cleanly. But make it hurt." I took that to heart. Days went by. People whispered about what happened. Some pitted us, some were scared to be seen talking. But one person stood out. Tom Delaney, the HOA treasurer. At every board meeting, he looked like he was carrying a secret that was eating him alive. When Madeline bragged about unanimous votes, his pen always slipped. When she announced new fines, he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I filed those moments away like blueprints, tiny stress points waiting to fail under pressure. One evening, Tom showed up at the cafe where I was working. He didn't even sit down at first, just stood there with a manila folder clutched in his hands. Then he said quietly, "I can't keep pretending this is okay." He slid the folder across the table, fingers trembling. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, meeting notes, records of false votes, fines funneled into an unregistered account, amendments that were never approved. He said, "She made me sign off or resign." His voice cracked. "I'm complicit," I told him. "Then let's stop pretending." From that moment, everything shifted. My wife helped me catalog the evidence. She called it fraud. I called it justice waiting to happen. A week later, the HOA had their big community beautification walk. Basically, Madeline's favorite excuse to march through the neighborhood nitpicking people's lawns. She came strutting up to my yard, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, talking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your hedges are out of compliance again," she said, tapping her pen like a gavel. I let her finish, then pulled a folded page from my pocket, the fraudulent amendment with her name typed in alone. "Before you issue another fine," I said calmly, "maybe explain why this amendment has no other signatures." The smile slipped for just a second, just long enough for the neighbors watching to see it. She stammered something about procedural details and stomped off, but that tiny flinch, Man, it did more damage than any argument could. People started talking. And once people start talking, fear starts dying. But the real turning point came at the neighborhood barbecue. Her idea, ironically, a celebration of unity. I showed up with 3 binders full of evidence. Set them down on a poolside table, in plain view. She spotted me, walked over, voice sharp. You can't display private board materials in public. I smiled. You mean these? I opened the first binder, fraudulent votes, fake fines, misused funds. Funny how all these unanimous decisions have your signature and no one else's. The air changed. Neighbors stopped eating. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Madeline's face flushed. She turned to Tom. "Tell them," she barked. But he didn't. He just stood there, eyes down, shaking his head. And that silence spoke louder than anything. The crowd pressed in with questions about fines, about missing money, about rules no one remembered approving. Madeline's voice cracked, her confidence melting under the sun. That's when I realized. Bullies don't crumble because you yell louder. They crumble when you hold up a mirror. By the time the next board meeting rolled around, the room was packed. No smiles, no polite chatter, just people ready to stop being afraid. Madeline sat at the head of the table, her perfect posture cracking under the weight of the stares. She tried to start with the usual speech about preserving property values, but nobody was listening. I waited until homeowner comments opened, then stood and laid the binders on the table. "Here," I said, "are your bylaws, your bank records, your votes that never happened. And here's the county seal proving it." Gasps filled the room. Someone shouted, "Is this true?" All eyes turned to Tom. His hands shook as he whispered, "We didn't vote. She added them herself." That was it. The dam broke. People stood, shouting, waving their violation letters in the air. "You fine me for a holiday wreath. You threatened to suspend my pool pass." Madeline tried to call for order, banging her gavel, but no one listened. Authority only exists when people believe in it, and nobody believed in hers anymore. My wife stepped forward, voice steady, almost calm. "These documents will be turned over to the county," she said. "The HOA can't operate under fraudulent authority." Madeline hissed something about lawsuits, about defamation, but the words didn't land. You could see it in her eyes. The moment she realized she'd lost control of the room, the power, the illusion. She gathered her papers like a defeated queen clutching her crown, but the crowd had already moved on, talking about recall votes, about new leadership, about rebuilding. When it was over, I walked outside into the humid night. The crickets were loud, the streetlights soft. My daughter ran up and hugged me, burying her face in my chest. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her breathing, steady, strong. We sat on the old bench under the oak tree, the one my dad built with me when I was a kid. It had weathered decades of storms and still stood solid. I told her, "This is what strength looks like, not shouting, not breaking things. Just standing steady until the truth shows itself." She looked up at me, eyes bright again, and said, "Grandma would have liked that." And man, that hit deep. Now, the HOA's under investigation, Madeline's off the board, and the neighborhood feels a little lighter. People wave again. Kids play without being told their chalk drawings violate something. But I keep that torn piece of fabric in my desk drawer, not as a reminder of anger, but as proof that even the smallest rip can unravel an empire built on control. So tell me, what would you have done? If someone humiliated your child in public and hid behind authority to justify it, would you fight back like I did, or walk away and let it burn itself out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear how you see justice in a world where the loudest voice isn't always the right one.